women that live in the Kansas City area, and I go out to dinner with them or to lunch with them. A year ago, my husband and I moved, and one of them came and helped us move even. I write to some who are still in prison, and so I do write to a few of them. But it's hard because when you're in prison and then they go get released, you don't know where they're going or how to keep in contact with them. So it's pretty hard to find them a lot of times. Yes?
I have lots of questions, but I'm just going to ask one. Did anybody keep up that dog program?
Yes.
Great idea.
Yes, the dog program still continued, so I'm so happy about that. A couple of prison officers took over the prison dog program and kept it going. So, and it's still going today. I don't think it's as big as when I had it. When I had the prison dog program, I had 100 dogs in the prison at one time, and I had about 90 dog handlers. I think it's a lot smaller than that, but they did still keep it going. So, anyone else? Yes?
John in prison for life.
He's in prison for life, yeah. So, John Maynard was in prison for life. He got convicted when he was 17 years old. He was with someone when they stole a car. And the person that he was with, who committed the crime with him, shot the guy who was in the car. And that guy passed away. And so John was convicted of felony murder, which means that someone died during the felony that you were a part of. And so he had a life sentence plus 117 months when I met him. And now he's had 20 more years added on to that. So unfortunately, I don't think he'll ever get out of prison.
Where were you incarcerated? Where were you?
I was in Topeka for a little bit. I was at CCA in Leavenworth, and I was in a federal prison in Houston, Texas.
Would you say it was your idea to smuggle him out, or was it, did he plan
No,
or how did
it was his idea. So he said to me one day, if I wasn't in prison, would you be with me? And I said, I might, I might, because I wasn't happy, and I thought maybe I would. And so to him, that meant I need to get out of prison and find a way. And so when he had worked out a lot of the details about an escape plan, then that's when he first put it forward to me.
Did you think you wouldn't get caught?
I didn't think we'd get caught. I mean, that's just so ridiculous, but I'm such a naive person. I think John knew we'd get caught, but I didn't think we would. And I just thought if we don't break the law, they'll never find us. But they look really hard. They don't stop that. Yes, back there.
So, is this your...
This is my husband over here, Chris. Yes. So, our 10-year anniversary is this coming Saturday. So, Chris, I tell you, he's the best thing that ever happened to me. So, when I got out of prison, I felt like I needed to leave Kansas City because I couldn't go into a restaurant and eat without people pointing at me. And I wasn't strong enough to deal with that. Today, could care less. But at that time, I couldn't have stood up to that. So I took a job in Boston. I moved to Boston, and I met Chris in Boston. And I stayed in Boston for 5 months, and then when I came back here, he came with me. And so we rented a 2-bedroom house, and we just had this platonic friend relationship. He had a bedroom, and I had a bedroom. And after about 6 or 7 months, things changed a little bit. And so then we got married. So
Great, congratulations.
thank you. So I used to say, Chris is my keel. So, my boat, my whole life was like, from one end to the other. But with Chris, I just stay steady in the water. And I'm Chris's anchor because when I met him, he didn't have a home. He was just sleeping in a friend's couch. And so I made sure that we had a home.
Very
So, yeah, thanks. I saw another hand, yes.
And how many kids do you have? Or did you have kids when this
I had 2 boys when this happened.
And how old were they?
My boys were 25 and 21 at the time. And my sons don't speak to me still. Actually, my youngest son died of Hodgkin's lymphoma 1 year after I got out of prison. So I have 1 son living, and he's 39 now, and he has 3 children. which I see at Christmas. He does come to our big family Christmas, and I do get to see his kids for about a half an hour, but he and I don't speak. So, and that bothered me for a long time, and I thought, how can you live without your child being part of your life? And then I realized he doesn't need me, and if this is what he wants in his life, then I have to respect that and give him that space. And so someday, maybe that'll change. I don't think it will, but you never know. God can do great things.
I hope it does.
Thank you. I do too. Me too. Any other questions? Yes. Today we don't have a dog. Chris and I together have had about 7 dogs in our 10 years, and they've all been rescue dogs, and we love them to death. And a year ago in September, our last 2 dogs, we had to put them down, and they were old, and we were heartbroken. And we decided we weren't going to get any more dogs because we were just going to travel and enjoy life. And 6 weeks after we put our dogs down, Chris said, Toby, get in the car, we're going to the shelter. We're going to get a cat. So now we have 2 cats. So it's easier to live with the cats when you live in an apartment than it was with the dogs, but I couldn't live without a pet altogether. So who knew that inside the dog lady was a cat woman? Yes.
So you are writing a book, or it's about to
I finished my book. I have written a book, and so it's called Unleashed. And it's kind of a combination memoir and self-help book. So what I did is took each one of the brokennesses in my life and I wrote a chapter about them. And I talk about some prison stories related to that brokenness, and then I talk about what I did to heal that. And I give the readers some exercises to do at the end of the chapter. So I finished the manuscript and I signed with an agent, and she's shopping the book to publishers. And this week, yes, she called me yesterday, and she was on the phone for almost all the morning with a senior VP at HarperCollins. So I'm hoping something comes out of that, but I'm hoping to see the book published in 2020. And then 2 weeks ago, I signed a movie option with a producer, and I'm co-writing a screenplay with her. So I think, when I was in prison, I was on suicide watch, and I was on suicide watch more than once, but on this one particular time, I was praying to God to just let me die. I just didn't want to deal with this. And he came into that suicide watch cell and told me that I would get through this and that he wanted me to use my story to change women's lives. So I'm trying to do what he asked me to do. Yes?
Okay, well, you made me cry. If you're doing a screenplay, what actress do you envision?
I have no idea. I thought Renee Zellweger, but they said no, she's had too much plastic surgery. She can never pass for you. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I think Edward Norton, though, for John Maynard. So, yeah. So we'll see what happens. Yes?
Did John bring contact with you after that happened?
That's an interesting question. So, about 4 or 5 years ago, a reporter called me and said that he'd been talking to John Maynard, and he wanted to give John Maynard my phone number. Would that be okay? And so I talked to Chris, and I said, what do you think we should do? And Chris said, well, talk to him. The guy doesn't have anybody. He doesn't have any family or any friends. Just talk to him. So John called, and Chris and I both talked to him quite often for about a year or 2. And then there's this exchange program in the prison. So if a state has a prisoner that they don't like, they can trade him to another state for a prisoner that they don't like. And they just swap prisoners. Well, John ended up in a prison in New Hampshire. And Chris grew up in Maine. So we were driving back to Maine to see where Chris grew up. And John Maynard, we were talking to him on the phone at the time, he said, I'm going to mail you a visitor's application. You two fill it out. I said, they're not going to approve me to visit you. What kind of prison would do that? And he said, you never know, fill it out. So look, we got it back in the mail, it said approved. And I thought, this is crazy. So Chris and I stopped in New Hampshire, and Chris got to meet him in person, and we got to visit for 2 hours, and that was kind of interesting. So it was good closure for me, because you know, you kind of got ripped away being arrested and you both go to 2 different prisons and you never talk again. And it's kind of hard to get closure from something like that. So it was great for me, and I think it was good for John, and I know it was good for Chris. And then we talked to John for another year maybe or so, and then he just kind of quit calling, and I don't even know where he is now. So, yes.
And then did you say, do you talk to your 4 siblings?
I talk to my brother all the time. My brother and I are really close. I have, actually there were 2 more of us born after my dad came home from the hospital. So there were 7 of us. So I'm really close to one brother. My sisters don't, you know, if I run into them at a shopping center, they'd say, hi, how are you? But we don't talk on the phone or anything. They're embarrassed. They feel like I embarrass the family. And they want me to just quit talking about it. Would you just get over it already? And I can't do that. So we aren't close. But my one brother and I see him every week, a couple times a week actually. So, you had a question?
How long was it, and you might have said this, I apologize, from when you broke him out to when you were captured?
12 days. The escape was on a Sunday and we got caught on a Friday. Almost 2 weeks later.
Did you have fun?
Yeah, we did. It was fun. There was times, you know, I realize now, it was a lot of fun. But I realize now, looking back and having been in prison myself, the pressure that John must have been under was immense because he knew that they were going to find him. And so he would just get so mad sometimes. He just was so under pressure that he would explode sometimes. So he had a temper that I didn't see when we were in prison, when he was in prison. So. Anyone else?